I hope my screen is visible to you all. So let's start with the topic. First of all, we'll see which topics we will cover today in this particular session. So the topic which we are going to cover today in the particular session is Introduction to Communication, Attributes of Communication, Importance of Communication, the entire communication process, what are the different types of communication, what are the different channels of communication via which we can use the communication to other person, and what are the importance of feedback, which plays a very vital role in communication. So before starting the topic, I would like to mention one thought which is given by Cara Blackburn, that you can have all the great ideas in the world, but if you can't communicate it, nobody will hear them. So the moral behind this thought is that you must learn how to communicate, because if we are not able to communicate, we cannot tell about our ideas, about our innovations. So now starting the topic, Introduction to Communication. First, we'll be discussing what is the meaning of the word communication. The word communication means to convey. That means to convey your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, and your ideas to other. Now, as we are talking about communication, so the very important factor and the very important aspect of this particular topic is that it's a two-way process. Like only one person is speaking and the receiver is not getting the point or is not able to understand what a person is saying to that particular receiver, then the communication is totally null and void. So the communication here means to make other person understand what you are transferring or what you are sharing to him or her. So now, going to the definition, business communication is sharing of information between people within an organization, and that is performed just to reap the commercial benefit of the organization, or we can say to accomplish the organizational goals. So the communication in an organization is done in form of emails, notices, circulars, or we can say meetings, which we used to conduct in an organization. So this explains the meaning and definition. Moving towards the next slide. Now, in this particular slide, we will be discussing about the attributes of communication, like what are the important characteristics, features of a communication. So when we talk about communication, the number one attribute is practical. That means the message which you are conveying or which you are transferring must include some practical components. That means when a particular event has taken place, what was the purpose of conducting that particular event, who were the members there in that particular event, and why the event has been conducted. So these all things include some practical aspects. Now, coming to the next attribute, which says factual. Factual here means that there should be the only facts and figures which are important or which are significant should be included. The overall information or overall idea of the information is not required in particular thing. So factual attribute says that only the facts and figures should be recorded. Now coming up to the third attribute, that is clear and brief. Clear and brief says that the information which we are sharing, the information which we are conveying to the receiver should be simple, short, and easy to understand. Simple, short, and easy to understand. That means the information or the message which you are designing for a receiver should be easy to understand, should be short and clear without any confusion. Okay. Now, the next is target oriented. Target oriented here means that the message or the information which you are creating or which you are encoding should have some specific objective. That means it should target your specific objective. For example, my objective as of now for this session is to make you understand about the concepts of communication and the topics which we are sharing or which we are discussing today. So it is the target oriented means that you should have some specific objectives and it has to be accomplished in your message, in your mails, or in any form of communication which you are using, right? Now, the last but very important point And very important attribute is persuasive. Persuasive here means to encourage or to persuade someone. For example, when we talk about to persuade someone, whom we are persuading or whom we are encouraging, we are encouraging the employees to perform better, to increase their productivity, or we motivate employees to perform better. And when we talk about persuading the customers or encouraging the customers, then we are talking about to encourage customers to go to the market and buy our products, right? So this completes the attributes of communication. Now, coming to the next topic, importance of communication. Now, as we have discussed the definition, the meaning, so now the very important aspect is why the communication is used in an organization. What are its importance? Why communication is needed in an organization? So here we will be talking about the importance of communication. Now, the very important aspect is building brand awareness. Building brand awareness here means, as I said, communication is used to inform people, to make people aware about your company's products, services. So here, in terms of business organization, if any organization is using communication tool, so they are making people or making audiences or making customers aware about their product, service, and offerings, right? And offerings. Next is achieving business goals. Achieving business goals. As when we are communicating on time and we are getting regular feedbacks, then it's easy for any business organization to achieve their goals. Next is facilitating decision making. Facilitating decision making here means, as we are able to receive timely feedback, so the superiors have the right time to take action and make decisions. So it helps in facilitating decision making also. Next point is enhancing customer relationships. Enhancing customer relationship here means that as the customers are also in connect with the employers or with the organizations, they also need some better service, or they also want some improvement to be done in the product and service. So they tell us using feedback. So in terms of feedback, we get to know what improvements are required and where the organization is lacking. So in that case, we do the improvement and that results into enhancing customer relationship. Now, next is building better teams. Building better teams here means that if there will be communication, each and every team member will be able to communicate about their feelings, their thoughts, and they'll be able to exchange their information. So it will help in building a better bonds between the team members in a team. Next is increasing productivity. As I already told, that when there will be proper flow of information from top level of management till bottom level of management, there will be clarity of information. There will be total clarity of what duties and responsibilities has to be accomplished, and this will increase in productivity. Next is boost morale and motivation. As the superiors will be able to guide subordinates, to encourage them by counseling, by mentoring, or by coaching. So it will help in employee motivation and morale also. Next is fostering innovation. Fostering innovation here means to create new ideas, to get new ideas, and it will come only by talking, by discussion, by talks, and by sitting in a group and solving your queries. So this, in total, we can say by communicating, we can facilitate or we can foster innovation as well. The last but not the least, resolving conflicts, or we can say reducing conflicts, right? Because if we are working in an organization, there are diverse group of people from diverse backgrounds, people from different cultures. So there might chances to have disputes, or there will be disputes. We cannot say there will be chances, there will be disputes. We all are human beings. So if we are not able to communicate, we'll not be able to resolve our conflicts. So to resolve conflicts, we need to communicate and maintain peace and harmony within an organization also and within team also. I hope this much is clear to you. Now moving towards the next topic. The next topic is the communication process. The communication process is a dynamic process that begins with conceptualization of ideas. As I told you, the communication process is always a two-way process. You can see this particular thing in the picture over the screen, that a sender is sending a message using a particular channel to the receiver. And here the receiver is decoding and then giving the feedback to the sender. This means this is the entire process of communication, right? Here sender encodes. Encodes here means creates or develops a message, and then he or she uses a particular channel. He or she uses a particular channel to float or to transfer that particular message to the receiver, and receiver decodes. Decodes means to understand the way it has been meant for, means to understand likewise the sender has made the message. And here one aspect is written over here, or one element is written over here, that is noise. Noise means the disturbances, the hurdles, the obstacles which do come in information exchange at some point of time, due to network issue over the phone calls, or due to internet issues over the emails, right? So these are the different types of noise elements which do come as a barrier or as a hurdle. Now, the different elements which were involved in the communication process are discussed here in detail. As I told you, sender is the person who conveys a message. The encoding is done by the sender, as he or she, the person who is communicating, uses the words or utilizes the words or selects the word, like what types of words and sentences to be used, so that the message can be simple, short, and easy to understand by the receiver. So these are the elements: sender, encoding, message. I hope it must be clear to you all. Noise. Noise is any obstruction, or I already told you, any barrier or any hurdle, any disturbance which is coming in between the communication is termed as noise. It can be bad telephone connection, faulty encoding, faulty decoding also. Faulty decoding here means that the receiver is not able to understand it as the sender has made that particular message. So there is some understanding issue with the receiver also, or inattentive receiver, right? Poor understanding of message. These can be the example of noise. Next, communication channel. Communication channel here means the channel or the platform which you are using. Either we are using the mail, or we are using the phone calls, or we are doing the video conferencing. Whatsoever channel is selected by the sender. Receiver, the person for whom the message is made and conveyed. And the person who is receiving the message must decode it and send the feedback to the sender, so that sender get to know, yes, the receiver has received the message as it has meant to understand, right? So this completes the entire communication process. Now, next we'll be moving towards the types of communication. Types of communication. Communication, there are basically two categories in which we can classify the communication. Number one is verbal communication, and number two is non-verbal communication. So in verbal communication, basically there are three types: oral communication, written communication, visual and audio-visual communication. And when we talk about non-verbal communication includes body language, facial expressions, gestures and postures, touch, and proxemics. We will be discussing about it in the next slide. So, as everybody knows, oral communication is done through spoken words or by speaking, like delivering a lecture. What I'm doing right now is doing oral communication, right? So it can be a face-to-face communication, it can be a telephonic talk, it can be a video chat, it can be a chat over internet. So all these types of communication is verbal communication, right? Now, next is written communication. When we talk about written communication, it is very, very much clear that anything which is done in writing, like it can be a message, it can be a mail, anything to exchange to two or more people to exchange ideas or information. And basically, when we talk about written information, typically it is formal information as compared to oral communication. Written communication is always the formal form of communication. It includes letters, emails, notes, texts, billboards, circulars, and many more. Now, third type of verbal communication is visual and audio-visual communication. When we talk about visual and audio-visual communication, it means that we are talking about the sight and sound. Sight and sound means that there will be, for example, we talk about smart classrooms. Smart classrooms means there will be audio-visual aids of education. Like there will be digital, in terms of digital education, there will be animated movies to, or there will be animated storytelling movies for students, for school going children, so that it can give a very good impact, a very long lasting impact on the minds of the students, on the minds of the children or kids. And they'll be able to grasp it and they'll be able to memorize it for a very long time. So this visual and audio visual communication is used in education also, and in other and many sectors also. So here it is already mentioned in slide. You can see visual communication is delivering information, messages, and points by way of graphical representation or visual aids, like slide presentation, diagrams, physical models, drawings, illustration. And as I am also giving you visual and audio visual presentation by doing slide presentation. Right? Now, coming towards non-verbal form of communication. Non-verbal form of communication, it is totally different from verbal communication. Here, we use the communication in terms of facial expressions, in terms of gestures, in terms of postures, in terms of body language, everything. So it is different in terms of verbal communication. So the very first type of non-verbal communication is body language. And body language is also known as kinesics. It includes facial expressions, it includes gestures, it includes eye movement also, postures, everything, right? So when we talk about body language is the study of body movements, gestures as a means of communication. Facial expression, most expressive part of the body. As you, from a facial expression of any person, you get to know whether that particular person is happy, sad, or is in anger. So this forms of communication is very, very expressive. Now, moving towards the next form of non-verbal communication, that is posture. How a person stands, how a person sits. So how a person stands while speaking indicates his overall personality, whether that person is relaxed, confident, attentive, or impatient. Right? So there are different meanings to different postures. Like an open posture displays warmth, friendliness, positivity, and closed posture displays boredom, indifference, and negativity. Now, then after kinesics, the very important study is proxemics also. Proxemics is the study of the space or distance between the sender and the receiver, or between the persons who are communicating. For example, a conversation between a subordinate and a superior. So the space between them during the conversation is the study we call proxemics, right? So here different distance has been, standard distance has been given by the study of proxemics, which here you can see in public space, it should be 12 feet or more. When we talk about social space, it should be 4 to 12 feet. And when we talk about personal space, it should be 1.5 to 4 feet. So these are the standard space which is being given by the study of proxemics. So we were talking about the non-verbal communications. Gesture. Gesture is the movement of body parts like hands and face to communicate some message. So it is moreover a form of informal communication. From hands or facial expressions or movement, sometimes we do it communicating message in terms of formal also, but moreover in informal form of communication we do it. So the next is touch. Touch is the study of like haptics is the study of touch. We can use this type of communication to motivate someone, to encourage someone. For example, a superior patting on the back of a subordinate to encourage him or as a form of appreciation, as a form of recognition, as the subordinate has done the very good job, or his performance is very good. Similarly, it is done in educational practice also, a pat given by a teacher to a student as an appreciation, as a motivation for securing good marks in the exams. And likewise. So these were the non-formal, non-verbal form of communication. Coming to the next topic, channels of communication. Now, channels of communication, the channels of communication are categorized into two major forms, formal and informal. When we talk about formal communication, it is done in business organization, in professional mode. When we talk about informal communication, it is done in between family, friends, relatives, and also in offices or business organization, but it is within a peer groups or within a colleagues. So it is a non-official form of communication when we talk about informal communication. So coming towards the formal form of communication. So when we talk about formal communication channel, it is categorized into three categories. Number one is downwards communication, which is done from top management to bottom management. Upwards communication is done from bottom level or functional level of management to the top level of management by giving the reports, by giving the feedbacks, or whatever the thing is required. And horizontal form of communication is done at the same level of profile. For example, quality manager, marketing manager, HR manager, the person who are on the same profiles is done at the same level. So coming towards the downwards communication. So downward communication, as the concept is already mentioned over here, it flows from higher level to lower level, and it is in forms of instructions, orders, notices, meetings, discussions, and it is useful for management and also helpful for superiors to take actions as they are well informed. But the disadvantage of it is time consuming, and sometimes the communication flow is over, or sometimes there are miscommunications also. Now, next is upwards communication. This type of communication is done from employee to higher level, from bottom level to higher level. And in this, it is in form of progress reports, suggestions, feedback, grievances, discussions, feedbacks. And the merits of particular this form of channel is it fosters friendly relation and provides timely feedback. And one demerit is messages are not heard at particular times. Like messages of bottom level or middle level of employees are not heard at the top level most of the time. Then superiors are not able to take decision on time. The last is horizontal form. And in this, as I already told you, it is done on the same level. So it is 100% oral with the mutual interaction. It saves times, gives immediate feedbacks, and the demerit is, and if it is like in excess, if it is not in limit, so it may creates disruptions among the employees, and sometimes it creates jealousy also. So this states the formal communication channel. Coming towards the informal communication channel, that is also known as grapevine network. Grapevine is word used for gossip. As I told you, it is totally an informal communication channel. It is unofficial, and people use it for gossip or for fun or for creating any rumors. So it is indirect way, and it is unofficial and is used for gossip. So there are different types of grapevine network, as it is mentioned over your slide: single strand chain, gossip chain, probability chain, and cluster chain. Now we'll be discussing these grapevine network channels, like how do these channel works. So when we talk about grapevine networks, there are 4 types. Single strand. As in single strand, what happens is you can see in the particular chart that X is communicating towards Y. So in this, Mr. X communicates with Mr. Y by intervening everybody in the channel. Like the message is or the information is floated step by step from Mr. X to Mr. Y. So this is a single strand channel when we talk about grapevine network. The coming up to the next is gossip. When we talk about gossip network or gossip chain, and here Mr. X, you can see, can selectively communicate with everyone. He doesn't have to follow a chain, but he can talk to anyone in the particular chain. Coming towards the probability, as the term already reflects its meaning, when we talk about probability, here the person can communicate randomly with anyone without following any method of communication, any channel of communication. They can talk randomly. The last one is cluster. This type of grapevine network selectively communicates with a person. Selectively communicates means in this particular chain, if a communicator trusts anyone, to that person only he or she can communicate. He doesn't communicate with each and everybody. So this completes the entire grapevine communication network. Now, coming to the next topic, merits and demerits of grapevine communication. Like, what are the plus and minus of grapevine network? As I already told you, it's an unofficial form of informal form of communication, though it's creating social bonds between employees. It spreads information very fast. It's allow manager to give quick feedbacks and improve group cohesiveness as people are socially connected with each other. Now, when we talk about demerits, everything has plus and minus as well. So when we talk about demerits, it is sometimes it miscommunicates also, as it at some point of time it creates rumors about people in the organization. It hinders productivity, as gossip is also waste time at some point of time, and in that case it results into productivity in lack of productivity. Ephemeral messaging here means they do message to each and everyone without any authenticity and all, and it at many point of time can damage company reputation, as it creating rumors. So rumors may damage the company reputation and goodwill. Now, the very important topic is feedback and its importance. When we talk about communication, as I already told you, we have already discussed in the entire process of communication that without feedback, it is a one-way communication. And when we talk about communication, so communication is a two-way process. So when we are talking about two-way process, feedback is very mandatory. So feedback is the information or response about a person's performance. It can be about a person's behavior, so that to improve behavior or to improve future performance. So it can be positive, it can be constructive, and at point of time, it can be negative also. But if we are talking about feedback in constructive form, we can do wonders in the organization, because constructive feedback helps in improving your performance and productivity. Now, coming towards the importance, well, like why feedback is important in an organization. So importance of feedback. Importance of feedback, number one, quicker growth. As we are getting to know about our performance, we can help in growing and can help in growing our performance, our behavior, enhanced performance, as the managers, clients, everyone tells you where to improve yourself. You know each and everything, and you just work on it and enhance your performance. And when we talk about quicker growth is not only for the individual level, it is also for the organizational level also. So now the third one is collaboration and trust. When we feel recognized, we trust in the system and we welcome the feedback, whether it is constructive or negative as well. Next is easy adaptation. Easy adaptation means when we are receiving input from every sources, we try to embrace change, we try to accept the challenges and adapt accordingly. Next is personal development. Personal development is related to constructive feedback, as constructive feedback empowers you to take the ownership and develop yourself in the area where it is required, so that you should come up with the excellent performance. Next is organizational improvement. Organizational improvement here is the process of feedback driven improvement. As the organization is adopting the process of continuous feedback, so the organization will also grow and develop with the employees. Next, thank you. So we complete this session, and this particular session, I hope you have understood the topic we have discussed till here. Thank you. Principles of effective communication. First, we'll notice that what is your audience, who is your audience, for whom you are creating that particular message. So as already told, it's a two-way process. So you should know who is your audience for whom you are creating a message or information. What is the level of their understanding? So you have to keep into mind before creating any message. Next is understand the purpose of creating your message or information. While communicating, you should know like what are specific things which must be included in particular message or information. Third one is know your topic, like on what topic you are going to give a speech or deliver a lecture. You should be clear about your topic. There should be no ambiguity in your topic. Next is set a goal. Right? Here setting a goal means that you should know what things have to be delivered, like at what particular of sequence, that everything should be in a proper order. And you must set a goal that you have to make your audience attentive, and your goal is to satisfy their understanding. Your goal is to make them understand your topic. So to achieve that, you have to keep everything in a very sequenced and in order, right? The next is be clear and organized. When we talk about clarity and organization, here clarity and organization means that information which you are passing on, or the communication which you are doing, should be in a clear manner. The words, the sentences, and the things which you are using should be very simple and easy to understand, and it should be in a very organized form, that is in a sequential manner. Now we'll be looking towards the 7 C's of effective communication. When we talk about 7 C's of effective communication, these are the 7 C's, and we can also sometimes say as the principles of communication also. We can include both 7 C's of effective communication or principles of communication, right? So the number first is conciseness. Number second is correctness. Third is concreteness. Fourth is clarity. Fifth is completeness. Sixth is consideration. And the last one is courtesy, and which is very important. So we'll be discussing about all the 7 C's in the next slide. So conciseness means that we should be very careful about the briefness. Briefness, as I already told you, your message or the information which you are communicating should be brief and short and easy to understand. The second is correctness. Correctness here means the accuracy of thoughts. Accuracy of thoughts here means how accurate facts, figures, and words have been used here, right? The next is concreteness. Concreteness here means while communicating, one should be very specific. It is about being specific rather than general. Here, concrete means only the relevant and significant information must be provided to the audience, or to whom you are providing the information. The fourth C is clarity. Clarity, as it's very clear, it means that the words which we are speaking, the sentences which we are using should be very clear in the mind of sender. If I want to communicate you something, I must be clear about at what time, what date the thing has to be performed. So there should be no ambiguity. There should be clarity of information. Next is completeness. Completeness means that you should have the complete message. There should be no incompleteness or any hidden information in it. So a complete message will help in clear understanding and also in effective decision making, not effective, in effective decision making. So next is consideration. When we talk about consideration, consideration here means sender must consider the feelings, the thoughts and emotions of the receiver. That means the person to whom you are communicating the information or message, you must consider your audience to whom you are. If you are talking to a kid or to a child, then your information structure should be different as compared to when you are talking to any corporate employee, right? So you have to take into consideration the audience for whom you are creating a message or to whom you are transferring the message. The last and the very important C is the courtesy. Courtesy here means the polite behavior. If you meet someone, you greet, you wish them good morning, good afternoon, whatever the time is accordingly, right? So, or thank you, or you acknowledge basically. So here courtesy means the polite behavior. So this completes the 7 C's of effective communication. Moving towards the next topic. The next topic is model of communication. When we talk about model, there are basically the communication models are categorized into 3 basic categories: linear model, interactive model, and transactional model. When we talk about linear model, it talks about one-way communication method. One-way communication method means that it doesn't wait for the feedback from the audience. The audience is passive over here. The second is interactive model. Interactive model talks about two-way communication method. Two-way communication method means you are getting the feedback from the receiver. So like you get the response from the receiver. The last is transactional model. In this model, there is two-way conversation, but it becomes more complex as the discussion progresses or as the discussion expands. The moment the discussion expands, it gets complex. So basically, the model of communication are categorized in these 3 classifications. We'll be discussing the sub-models under these categories. So moving towards the next slide. When we talk about linear models, as you can see, it is mentioned over there in the slide. When we talk about linear models, they only look at one-way communication. The most prominent linear model of communication are Aristotle communication model, the Shannon-Weaver communication model, and the Burroughs SMCR communication model. So in linear models category, we will be discussing about these 3 models: Aristotle's, Shannon-Weaver's, and Burroughs SMCR, right? Aristotle model. The Aristotle model of communication primarily focuses on the sender. Here, the sender passes on message to the receiver. The sender is the only active member in this model, and the audience is passive. As I already told you, the audience is passive in linear models. This makes Aristotle communication model a foolproof way to excel in public speaking, seminars, lectures. Right. So basically, a linear model is used in sales and marketing, right? So when we talk about Aristotle model, they identified the 3 basic elements: ethos, pathos, and logos. Okay, here ethos defines the credibility of the speaker, like how much the speaker is having good authority, how credible he is. So this defines the credibility of the speaker. When we talk about pathos, it connects the speaker with the audience. How the speaker is connected with the audience to different emotions like anger, happiness, excitement. So that is the connection between the speaker and the audience. The next is logos. That signifies the logic. Namely, it is not enough for the speech to be interesting. It needs to follow the rules of logic. So basically, the information here means that the information should contain some logic. As shown in Aristotle communication model diagram below, Aristotle also suggests that we look at 5 components of communication. The 5 components are speaker, the number one, the person who is transmitting the information, the speaker, and the speech here means what he is transmitting, the occasion, on which occasion he is speaking, what, who are the target audience, and obviously the effect, what is the effect of particular speech. So these are the 5 elements Aristotle has taken into consideration in his model of communication. The next is the Shannon-Weaver model of communication. This model is very popular as it has been developed by the mathematicians, and it as it comes in the linear model of communication. So here here are the 4 or 5 elements which are very important: information source, transmitter, receiver, receptor or reception, who is receiving the message, and the very important thing is the noise. Noise here means the barriers which are coming between the communication. So the Shannon-Weaver model is, as I already told you, is a model which is given by mathematician and is based on mathematical concept. And here the process is one way. And as I told you, information source is the sender, the person who is communicating or transmitting the message. Encoder is the encoding here means sender is using some platform to change, convert, or to create some information using signals, which will in next step will be transmitted to the receiver. Noise is the physical disturbance like environment, people, which completely change the actual meaning of the actual meaning of the transmitted message and also distorts the source. Decoder, it convert the signal again into the message which can be understandable by the destination. And the last one is destination. Destination here means to whom the message is being sent. So the sender who, to whom the message is sent, like the receiver is the person to whom the message is sent. So he is the destination, he or she is the destination point. So for example, if we have taken the example of an editor who is making a call to a reporter about creating a meeting for a news coverage at 5 p.m. So in this particular example, you can see the sender here is the editor, the encoder is telephone network company, channel is mobile network, noise is here missing time due to disruption. Here means the reporter is unable to hear that he has to cover the coverage at 5 p.m. So this is the noise due to network disruption. So decoder is mobile phone. Using mobile phone, he is receiving that particular information. So this completes the example of Shannon-Weaver model. Now, the third model which comes in this category is Berlow's SMCR model of communication. Berlow's SMCR communication model is a linear model of communication that suggests communication is the transfer of information between 4 basic steps. Again, SMCR model we are talking about. S is source, M is message, C is channel, and R is receiver. So it is a transfer of information between 4 basic steps or key elements. So these are source, message, channel, and receiver. Here you can see source includes communication skills, knowledge, system, culture, attitude. When we talk about message, it includes contents, elements, treatment, structure, code. Same goes with channel. When we talk about channel, which choice of channel we are taking? Are we taking emails? Are we taking phone calls? Are we taking video conferencing? So these are the forms of channels where we hear, see, touch, smell, taste, whatever the channel is. And receiver, when we talk about, here we are talking about the communication skills, the attitude, the knowledge, the social system, and the culture. The receiver and the sender must have the same parameters, right? Now, the second kind of model is interactive model of communication. In this particular model of communication, we analyze two-way communication. Like there is one model, the Osgood Scrum communication model. And third type is transactional model of communication. In this, they illustrate two-way communication where the message gets more complex as the communication events progresses. And in this particular transactional model, there is only one model, Dance helical communication model. So moving towards the interactive model, the Osgood Scrum communication model. The Osgood Scrum communication model is a circular model of communication in which messages go in two directions between encoding and directing. Like from, as you can see on the screen, the encoder is passing message to the decoder, and again decoder is passing message to the encoder, right? So the communication here is circular. Individuals involved in the communication process are changing their roles, as encoders and decoders. Communication is equal and reciprocal. Both parties are equally engaged as encoders and decoders. The message requires interpretation. The information needs to be properly interpreted to be understood. And as shown in the Osgood Scrum communication model, the model process into three steps: encoding, decoding, and interpreting. The sender encodes the message, the receiver decodes it, and then interprets it. That what is mentioned over there in the message. Now, moving towards the transactional model, there is one model, Dance helical model of communication. According to Dance helical model of communication, with every cycle of communication, we expand our circle. This particular model name suggests Dance helical model. The entire model is in a circular form. So the model views as a circular process. As it expands, it gets more complex. That is why it is represented by a helical spiral in the Dance helical communication model. Every communication act is therefore a chance for us to learn how to communicate more effectively in future, and feedback helps us to show more effectiveness towards communication. So this completes the model of communication. Coming towards the barriers to effective communication, we'll be discussing about different barriers of communication. The factors which obstructs the effectiveness of communication is known as communication barriers. When we talk about barriers here means, I already told you in your previous lectures that when we talk about barriers is the obstacle, hurdle, or disturbance which comes in communication. So these barriers cause a mismatch between the understanding of the message by the sender and the receiver. So classification of barriers to communication are mentioned over here. There are basically four types of classification: semantic barriers, psychological barriers, organizational barriers, and personal barriers. So we'll be talking about the semantic barrier first. First, let's have a look on types of barriers to effective communication, and there are sub barriers also. When we talk about semantic barriers, there are different examples we can say, or different reasons due to which semantic barriers take place. Number one is badly expressed message. As it is mentioned, badly expressed messages. When we talk about semantic barriers, the barriers is related to the words, messages which you are using. So badly expressed message, symbols with different meanings, faulty translations, unclarified assumptions, technical jargons, body language, and gesture coding. Next is when we talk about psychological barriers, premature evaluation, lack of attention, loss of transmission and poor attention, distrust. When we talk about organizational barriers, organizational policy, rules and regulations, status, complexity in organization structure, and organizational facilities. The last is personal barriers. When we talk about personal barriers, there are fear of challenge to authority, lack of communication and confidence, unwillingness to communicate, and lack of proper incentives. So we'll be discussing more about it in the next slide. We were discussing the barriers to the communication. So number one is semantic barriers. Here, semantic means the branch of science that deals with words and sentences. So in this, what happens is if the sender is using some error in the words or some wrong words or some faulty sentences, then it can be constituted as a barrier in the communication. So the examples of semantic barriers can be badly expressed messages, symbols with different meanings, faulty translations. So badly expressed messages is considered when there is usage of wrong words or there are such words which shouldn't be used. Right. Likewise, there are other conditions for semantic barriers like symbols with different meanings, symbols with different meanings, or some words having the similar meanings like idle and ideal. So like beer, bear, advice. So these sounds similar but have different meanings. So these are the examples which may come under the semantic barriers. The other is faulty transmissions. Here, faulty transmission means sometimes what happens is the receiver doesn't understand the language which is used by the sender. So the translator or the sender must be proficient enough to translate the language. Otherwise, it may lead to barrier towards communication. The other types of semantic barriers are faulty assumptions. In faulty assumptions, the receiver may have different assumption in this if the sender is not having the clarity about the message. For example, a boss may say that you have to complete this work, and but he or she may not have mentioned the time, the date, and the deadline. So here the employees are not very much aware of it, that when the task has to be accomplished. Is it have to be completed today, the next day, or in a week? So this considered as the faulty assumptions. The other comes is technical jargons. Technical jargons here means the jargon here means the errors or the omission which is considered by the experts who use technology. So these are the jargons which experts tells about. So such jargons are not understood by common people. So sometimes technical jargons also considered as semantic barriers and affect the communication process. The last but the very important part is body language and gesture decoding. Here it means your body language doesn't go with your word. If you are not having a good facial expression, so it might affect your message or information you are conveying. So your body language, your information, and your messages should have coordination among themselves to be effective. The second category in barriers towards communication is psychological barriers. When we talk about psychological barriers are barriers arises on the emotional and psychological status of the sender and receiver. So some common types of psychological barriers are premature evaluation. When we talk about premature evaluation here means the tendency of making a judgment before listening to the entire message. For example, if somebody comes and interact with you, but before listening to him completely or her completely, you directly jump on judgment or jump on the views of your own. So this is known as premature evaluation, and at many times it happens with the colleagues or with friends or in family also. So sometimes psychological barriers also affect the communication and also impacts negative impact on the relationships as well. So next is lack of attention. Lack of attention here is if the receiver is not attentively listening to the sender or the sender is not attentively transmitting the message, So the meaning or the transmission gets hampered, and the receiver is not able to understand the message as it was meant. So lack of attention also plays a very vital role. The next comes is the loss of transmission, loss by transmission and poor attention. Here means loss of transmission means the inaccurate information is transmitted, and the receiver doesn't retain the message properly, or sender sometimes does not use the good channel to send the messages. So in that case, transmission comes. The last is distrust. Here, distrust is between the mutual trust between the sender and the receiver. So we were talking about the barriers to the effective communication. As we have discussed till psychological barriers, now next comes is the organizational barriers. When we talk about organizational barriers, in an organization, communication has to pass through various levels of channels and departments. So in that case, when we talk about organizational barriers, the organizational policies, rules, structures, guidelines, all these sometimes acts as an obstacle, because if there are very strict rules and regulations, the authority is very much centralized. In that case, the decision making gets delayed, and sometimes it acts as a barrier to the communication. So some of the organizational barriers are organizational policy, rules and regulation. Very rigid and cumbersome rules and regulation also acts as a barrier. The next comes the status, like psychological distance is created between the superior and the subordinates because of the status. So the status also stands as an obstacle in accurate communication. The next is complexity in organizational structure. When we talk about the complexity in organizational structure, it talks about the managerial levels in an organization structure, because if there are centralized authority, then the decision making, as I told you, gets delayed. So there are distortions also. So the last in the organizational barriers comes this is the organizational facilities. If facilities like frequent meetings, conferences, suggestion boxes, complaints are absent, if they are not available, so in that case, it hampers the communication, and also it lacks into uh, less productivity. The last comes the personal barriers to communication. The personal barriers consists of the personal factors of both the sender and the receiver, the person who is transmitting the message and the person who is receiving the message. So personal barriers includes fear of challenge to authority. If superior feels that the communication get hampers by his authority, then he may withhold the communication with himself only. Or if there is lack of confidence, if there is lack of confidence of superior on his subordinate, his like the boss or the senior is not having faith or much confidence in his team members or in his subordinates, then there is also the lack of effective communication. Unwillingness to communicate. If a superior doesn't want to communicate to his subordinate, in that case also the reason that results into ineffective communication. The reason behind that is the there is some trust factors issue, or some coordination issue, or some team issues in there. So at point of conflict, at point of disputes also, there is unwillingness to communicate at certain levels also hampers the communication. The last one in the personal barrier is the lack of proper incentives. That means lack of proper incentives. Subordinates also do not take initiative to communicate where there is no motivation or incentives. Here means if lack of proper incentive here means if the subordinate or the team member is not taking any initiative, then he or she may not get the incentives, and which lacks into demotivation, and it also hampers the communication and performance also. So as we have studied the and different types of barriers to the communication. In conclusion, I would like to mention that to exchange ideas, thoughts, and information, we need to understand it first and cooperate with the receiver as well. So this completes the entire barriers to communication for today's session. And in the next session, we'll be discussing about the different cases and examples related to the same topic. Thank you, everyone.